Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to lawsplaining the interwebs, or whatever I named my show a year ago. And hi, it is great to be back. I am your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. An actual lawyer, not to be confused with the dummy over there. That guy is not a lawyer, but he's got some things to say about some legal topics, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, how are you guys? I have been missing this. I've been missing this a little bit. I was on vacation with my lovely wife. We went to Maui. It was a trip that had actually been planned before the show even started, like before I started recording last November. So it was great to have a capstone for a year of recording and to take a vacation, I guess. But it was crazy because all of this stuff was happening. We've got Obamacare being ruled unconstitutional. We've got Mumkey being thrown off of YouTube like 10 times in a row. We've got now we've got Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson talking about pulling Patreons. I think was Sam Harris did pull his Patreon. They're talking about creating some intellectual dark web Patreon competitor. We'll see how that goes, right? We'll see what happens with that. We've got the YouTube purge. They purged spam and bot accounts. I don't know if you guys know. If you're a spam or a bot account, you've been purged. So a lot of people lost subscribers from that. I think I lost about 20. I saw Sargon lost several hundred, maybe 800-900. Mundane Matt, we don't know if he lost any from spamming or if it was literally just people normally unsubscribing to him. Don't know. We may never find out. We may never know. But yeah, so we've got a lot of stuff that's been going on, and I am back to hit the ground, I guess, running and start talking about this stuff. Hold on, I'm going to move this mic a little closer so I'm not screaming at everybody. But yeah, we've got so much to talk about. And I mentioned this in the chat, but if you're catching this later or whatever, you don't see the beginning of the chat, that's fine. There's a video going around Twitter right now. It's currently over 90,000 views. It's a high schooler. He's recording his history professor, right? Or his history teacher. Not professor. Let's not overstate the qualifications of your average high school teacher. His history teacher, he's recording him talk about how if you are a follower of PewDiePie, for example, or if you retweet something he tweets, or if you share a video, then you are supporting anti-Semitism and are anti-Semitic. And not only that, but if PewDiePie were fined for his unlawful hate speech, you could also be implicated and you could be in trouble. He's telling this to kids who are younger than, who aren't even old enough to drive. We'll put it that way. He's telling this to kids who aren't even old enough to drive, that if they retweet PewDiePie, that they could be criminally liable and fined for his speech, right? This is what's going on in an American classroom. And guys, if you don't believe that, if you think the political situation in America's public schools is being hyperbolized, tomorrow, join me, because I'm going to have the kid who recorded the video on this show. He's his Twitter bio says he's a free speech guy. He's young. So that might be a little interesting. I don't know. But he's in an American high school. He's recorded this video, so he's definitely got a politically charged classroom. We're going to talk to him about the video. We'll talk to him about the teacher. We may try and find out who the teacher is on stream, so I can invite the teacher on to another show to talk about this stuff. So maybe I can educate the teacher a little bit about the legal ramifications of tweets and retweets and shares. We're going to do that, but we're going to have that guy on the show tomorrow. So come join us. We're going to talk about, I don't really know. We haven't planned too much about what we're going to talk about, but we are going to hopefully discuss what it's like to be a high schooler, to have certain political views or political positions, and to be pressured daily by teachers who have decided to agendize education, whether they're doing it as part of the structure of the education system in America or whether it's just an individual sort of movement. Because not everything's a conspiracy, right? Not everything's a concerted effort. Sometimes it's just personality types gravitate towards a certain thing, and then you have a predominant number of people. Like, it's not, I mean, we can make analogs. Like, it's unlikely that the tech industry hires largely white and Asian men, right? Like, they're not out there going, you know what? I want more Asian white men. We know for a fact Google is not doing that. Yet, there's a large number of Asian and white men graduating with computer science degrees and exploring computer science and being very good at it. And they end up being top tier candidates in tech because of the sheer volume of that demographic. That might be what's going on in American public schools with teachers. I don't know. We're going to try and get some impressions from someone who's living it right now. Because I tell you what, I graduated from high school 18 years ago, and it was a little bit bad then. It's really bad now. So that's what we're going to do. Let's see. We've got a couple chats that have come through before the show, and I want to talk about those real quick. Excitable Boy says, Lex Volt. Well, Lex Volt's back to you. Super Iron Bob says, welcome back, and shall not be infringed means trample me daddy, right? Yes, I think it does. I think that's the thought. That's certainly how we're interpreting the Second Amendment, all the way up to the Supreme Court, including my good, not friend, my good legal hero in many ways, Antonin Scalia, was a terrible, he gets a lot of credit for doing DC versus Heller, for writing that opinion. I hate that opinion personally. I think it lacks foresight. I think there's problems with his legal reasoning because it doesn't go anywhere near far enough in protecting a guaranteed right. It doesn't go anywhere near as far as the Supreme Court would go in protecting any other inalienable right. It just doesn't. So we need to talk about, that's what we're talking about today, of course, is the Second Amendment. But where was I going with? Oh, yes, that's shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed is a pretty flippin' simple concept, right? Don't infringe upon it. Infringement, encroachment, interference with, reduction of, mitigation. These are all infringements. Anything that prevents you from exercising that right is an infringement. It says shall not be. Supreme Court says shall not be unless a whole lot of things. It all goes back to U.S. v. Miller. I don't know how much I'm going to talk about Miller on this show because I really want to do a full-on dissection of U.S. v. Miller. It's a terrible, terrible decision. It's why we have ATF. It's why the National Firearms Act exists. It's why Congress thinks they can prevent you from owning a real machine gun, fully automatic machine gun, also known as awesome. It's why they cannot manufacture and sell machine guns to you, but they can to the U.S. military and to the police. It's all around terrible. And hold on one second. I got to sneeze. Holy cats. Woo! That was professional. I should have probably muted that, but I didn't. Aside from that, Bagel Goose says that teacher runs T-Series. Yes, he's got to subvert PewDiePie any way he can. The next thing. So, if I may digress a bit, I had a great vacation with my wife. Like I said, We were on Maui. We got to do all sorts of fun stuff on the island. And something that I got to do that I've never done was go to 2 different distilleries on Hawaii or on Maui. One of them produces ocean organic vodka. And if you're watching, I doubt it, but if you're watching, Ocean Guy, the tour was great. The vodka is fantastic. I bought lots of their rum, which was, here's an example. This is Kula rum. It's from the same place. They make all of their spirits from sugarcane, organic sugarcane. Very, very good. I bought 3 of their rums. I didn't buy their vodka because I can get the vodka here in Minnesota, but you can't get the rum anywhere else except for Hawaii and Texas currently. So I can't recommend them enough. Ocean vodka and then the Kula rum. If you're in Texas or Hawaii, pick some up. It's great. Great stuff. And I'm not a rum guy. So we're going to drink something very soon. Then the other distillery I went to was they make Pow vodka. Hold on. I got a whole bunch of their stuff. I didn't buy their vodka, but they make this Fid Street Hawaiian gin. I think that's maybe what I'm going to drink tonight because this stuff is fragrant, floral, and very, very good. Good gin. Not a boring gin. Some gins are pretty boring. So I'm going to open that. But anyway, so all in all, I've got 8 new liquors to sample and review over the next couple weeks or whatever. Talk about that. So that'll be fun. But those distillery tours were great and very, very interesting to see the process of how they do stuff on Hawaii. Very different from a traditional like Scotch distillery. I did buy the only Maui brand whiskey. It's up here because it's tall. It's Paniolo. This is a whiskey that is they import some of the whiskey and then they actually cut it with spirits distilled from pineapple. So pretty cool. It's from the Haile Miley they call it, but that's not how you actually are supposed to pronounce it. But Haile Miley Distilling Company, very good stuff as well. None of them have paid me for any of this. It's just my personal impressions. Great products all around. Excuse me. Let's see. I think that covers most of the backstory. But we're going to be drinking Hawaiian gin and vodka and rum and all that stuff over the next couple days, weeks, whatever. I can't drink all of it because Lady Rackets would kill me. She likes to have it too. Here we go. But let's talk Second Amendment, right? Oh yeah, a couple things real quick. As always, you can interact with me anytime during the show through a super chat or through a justice chat. More and more, I am asking people to send the justice chats because even though PayPal is a giant ball of cucks, I would rather pay PayPal less than I'm paying YouTube with every chat that comes through. So if you do send a chat through the justice chat link, which is in the description, it will paste over my face. I think you can add emojis and stuff like that to it, animated GIFs or whatever. Go ahead and do that. They will, of course, get read on stream, just like the super chats. Either of those are great ways to interact with me. You do not have to pay money to interact with me, but I appreciate every penny that comes through. It helps me make this show, and it helps me hopefully make this show better and helps me grow the channel and grow the content that's out there. So, but you can always tag me in the chat and I will occasionally get to it. It depends on how things are going, if I see it and whatever. But of course, if you do a super or justice chat, I will promise to read through them, even if they're making fun of me. Mike Kelly, I would love to have Dave Rubin on the show. I'd love to have anybody of that caliber on the show, of course. But the hard part with someone like a Dave Rubin or any of these other people is I don't have a way to guarantee talking to them. So anyone who would be willing to help out, if you've got a line to them, I would love. I'll talk to literally anybody. Actually, maybe this is a little bit of a spoiler. I had a very pleasant chat with a man by the name of Vox Day today on the phone. And he and I have discussed him coming on this show. And we're going to try and set up a time to do that and a good topic for us to discuss. So we will have that happening in the near future as well. Like I said, I will talk to people I agree with. I will talk to people I disagree with. I don't let positions interfere with relationships, because if I demanded everybody to have ideological purity to my positions, I'd only be friends with me, and that wouldn't work. So we will have Vox Day on. I would love to have Dave Rubin on, or anybody involved in this new project or any new project to break out of what we've got, because we really, like, guys, I can't stress how bad it's getting. We've got monopolistic companies, and I'm actually pro-monopoly, believe it or not. I've talked about this before. I don't see monopolies as inherently bad. I really don't. If a monopoly exists because it has created a superior product and attracted the most customers, then I think it should exist. When monopolies start abusing their ability by keeping out competitors, that's where we have problems. The other problem that we have is when governments are reinforcing monopolies and allowing them to anchor their position. The credit industry is so heavily regulated. Credit processing, payment processing, all of banking is heavily regulated. But in this weird, perverse sense, that protects big companies, not small companies. The regulations that become onerous, expensive, difficult to manage, require entire departments of experts and lawyers. That protects MasterCard. It eliminates competition. That's a government-supported monopoly. Regulation is always favored by larger companies because they can comply with it. Now, sometimes there are regulations that they don't like, right? Obviously, that happens. But the operating regulations that are controlling the banking industry, those absolutely, even though they're onerous to MasterCard and they might not like them, or they might like them to go away, they benefit from them over any small payment processor by, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 100, 1,000-fold. Sheer volume of revenue and assets allows them to exploit regulation to suppress competition. It actually helps them influence regulation to keep out competition. And if you think MasterCard doesn't have a history of doing this, MasterCard absolutely has been an anti-competitive company for decades. Lots of lawsuits. I think they're the most heavily litigated company on antitrust issues that currently exists. They're very bad about it, have been a bad player for a long time. So that's that. We'll be talking about that as we go. But yes, I would love a connection or anything you guys, if you see a tweet from them, you can always just tag me or retweet it or say, hey, you should talk to Nick. Or direct message Nick. My DMs are open. I would talk to any of these guys. Maybe there's the off chance that one will see it and respond. If you want to do that, I'd appreciate it. If you don't feel the pressure. I'll try and connect to them through ways that I have. Okay, couple chats, and then we'll start talking about Dr. Howard Kastrup, the intellectual who has figured out the Second Amendment argument and pointed out its fairy tale nature. Guns Beer Freedom says, all these gin-hating babies in the chat need to grow some taste buds. If you hate gin, I will say you just need a different gin. That's it. Like if you're drinking, what is it, Blue Sapphire gin or New Amsterdam, you mix that, fine. It's not a gin you can just sip. They're very good gins that you can just sip. I haven't had Hendrix. So next is Kikagezumi. Says that liquid pouring sound made me crave some Mountain Dew for some reason. What do you think of Hendrix gin? I've not had Hendrix gin, but I will say that Heyman's Old Tom gin is a fantastic gin. Very good. It's different than anything else. Different than anything else that I've ever tried. And this Fid Street gin, if you're ever in Hawaii, pick some up. It's great. Again, it's different than these other gins. It's got a robust array of flavors. All right. Let's see here. Let's get into Howard Kastrup. Oh, I missed Absolute Gold last night. Cecil says his stream was awesome. He consumed the bottle saved for your stream and wasn't the drunkest, i.e. Kelsey Shannon. Well, I am sad to have missed it. I'm really sad that I messed up the scheduling with Yellow Flash and Cecil Says, and we are working on getting a new stream set up as soon as possible. So there's that. All right. And Hikaru says, I think EVS could get you in touch with Peterson. Maybe he could. I'll have to ask him. I have no idea if he has that connection or not. But I would love to talk to Jordan Peterson. Very interesting guy. And I have criticisms of JP as well, especially on the Kavanaugh thing. I think he was dead wrong on it. I think he's a great thinker and speaker. What am I doing? Let's get into this. Let's do this before this guy sues me for copyright infringement of his stupid article. As if anyone would want to write down something that reads like this. So this is Howard Kastrup. Let's real quick look at his bio. He's a PhD. He is the owner and chief scientist of Integrated Sciences Group, a small engineering consulting and software development company located in Bakersfield, California. Shocker. Okay. Dangplank what? What? Of course I'm Aquaman with the ability to talk to lobsters. Okay, so Howard Kastrup. So this, importantly, this is not a lawyer. And that's something that we have to remember because when PhDs, who are very good at whatever field they're in, try and stray from that field, they will give them credit outside of their area of expertise. But once you're outside of your area of expertise, you're just a dummy with an opinion. Just like me, right? My expertise is in various fields of law. When I go outside of that, I try to bring in an expert. Otherwise, I'm just a guy with an opinion. My opinion might be right, might be wrong, but it doesn't have any more authority than anyone else's. But what will happen is PhDs will write an article or an opinion piece, as in this case is an opinion piece. They'll write an opinion piece outside of their scope of expertise, but their PhD is there, and then people will lend it credence. Oh, this is a deep thinker, an educated person. That doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about here. And I don't think Howard Kastrup actually does. Let's see what he's got, though. So here's what we've got for Howard's article. We're going to read through it. I'm going to add commentary. Howard, you are a PhD. You have shared this with the Bakersfield, what's this called? What's this art? What's this? Bakersfield.com, community voices section. You do not have, you have a copyright interest in this. However, I'm going to, one, offer plenty of commentary and critique to make this fair use. And two, by giving it to this paper, you've probably licensed it out, and you've probably, although I haven't read the paper's terms of service, you've probably given a license for other people to share and repost this article, so long as credit is given to Bakersfield.com. That is where it's from. You can see it, although it's a little bit obstructed, but it is from Bakersfield.com. So, just in case you think your PhD makes you a copyright expert, you're not. All right, That said, there have recently been attempts to restrict the acquisition and distribution of firearms. Oh, have there. Thank you for that. These have been rooted in, and here's where you know where this article is going. These have been rooted in a sane and reasonable desire to curb senseless killings. No, they're not rooted in a sane and reasonable desire to curb senseless killings. And to put it out there as if that were fact is incorrect. They have been rooted in an unreasonable and insane fear of firearms. Firearms which, if they were as dangerous as claimed, the 300 to 600 million firearms that exist in American homes today would be, the murder rate would be far higher than what it is if they were as dangerous. The accidental killing rate would be far higher. To think of the percentage of actual gun fatalities that occur with respect to the amount of guns in the hands of untrained general public, when you listen to the way these people talk about what a firearm can and does do, we're not talking about curbing senseless killings. We're talking about an absolute rejection of the data, not an embrace of any sort of data. A reasonable desire to curb senseless killings would look at things that are causing senseless killings. For example, the illegal drug trade is causing senseless killings. How do we start to manage? The murder rate in America is huge. However, if you factor out violence related to drugs and other crime, if we factor out violence that is localized in specific communities and involves specific demographic groups, particularly low income, particularly high crime, particularly single mother demographics that are largely concentrated in urban areas, specific urban areas, you eliminate vast amounts of the murder rate. It's shocking. It's almost like insular groups inside the overall country are causing most of the violence. And generally, violence outside of those areas is absolutely in line with every other country on earth, maybe even lower than many lower murder rate westernized countries. But you have stuff like the drug trade, where illegal drugs, specifically marijuana, legalizing that could potentially lighten things like murders related to drug deals and drug territory. I don't know. Maybe not. But you have other problems causing a murder rate. It's not just the fact that people own guns. And restricting access to guns doesn't necessarily restrict violence. There's actually lots of competing views on it. And if you really want to know about it, the CDC under Obama actually studied this. Despite what idiots will tell you over and over and over again that the CDC can't get funding for it because of some fanciful bill that doesn't exist, in 2012, the CDC researched this and found that somewhere between 200,000 and 2 million, I think were the two numbers. It was this massive spread because they just can't get data on it. Incidents of self-protection happen with guns, which far exceeds any murder rate and accidental homicide rate that guns cause year over year. So it's shocking the amount of ignorance you have to have about the data and the amount of discarding you have to do of actual data to get to the argument that this is a sane and reasonable desire to curb senseless killings. Senseless killings, let's just put that out there. What killings are senseless? I mean, death at the hand, homicide is senseless in a grandiose sort of philosophical perspective, right? It's a waste of life. It's something that shouldn't happen. But these aren't aimless murders. It's not like people are randomly spraying bullets around and people are dying. They're making intentional decisions to kill other people based on several factors. Oftentimes, it's people they know. Other times, it is related to other crimes, as stated before. But let's move on. Sorry, we're only 2 sentences in and I'm already pissed. While entirely reasonable, keep telling us how reasonable they are. That will make it so. They're continually thwarted by appealing to the Second Amendment of the Constitution. Well, shoot, Howard. Maybe we should just not appeal to the First Amendment right of you to say something stupid to a newspaper, or for them to publish your opinion piece that is unfounded and outside of your element. I mean, without that First Amendment protection, we could have a pro-gun Congress come in and shut out your ability to talk against guns, right? The NRA could lobby everyone and give their millions of magic dollars to all of the congressmen to prevent your speech, if only we didn't appeal to the First Amendment of the Constitution. The darn recording of rights that we all have. Shucks. Shoot for the founders recognizing that at some point we might need to protect the rights of the individual. Dang it. Oh my goodness. Sorry, Ronnie Schreiber. He said, RE, Patreon, and PayPal. The right needs its own bank, or at least a sympathetic one. Ultimately, it's about money and processing payments. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know if the right getting its own bank or payment processor will actually solve the problem. I'm trying to look into this more. What I really want to do is find a financial systems expert to talk about this, because I think what you'll find is when you start exploring things like the NACHT, I think is what it's called. Maybe it's NACHA. They run the ACH payment processing system. It's a trust, but that trust has a set of rules and participants. And to be a participant, you have to abide by those rules. It's just a free business, right? The trust is a private entity that owns all of the back office processing, all of it, throughout all of the banks, no matter who's running the banks. The bank-to-bank payment processing that happens overnight in batches, that's the ACH system. If you're not familiar with this, this is how you can send money from bank A to bank B overnight without a check. It's how you can make online payments, all of that stuff. It's a giant partnership, and it's managed by one trust that has a set of rules that's set by a board of trustees. And who's on the board of trustees? Bank of America, I think. Maybe these aren't the specific names, but they're names you know. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, US Bank, Goldman Sachs. You know, these large banking conglomerates are the people who set the rules. So having a right-leaning or right-sympathizing bank doesn't necessarily mean that bank will get to come to the table. Participation in the ACH system are just free companies freely exercising their right of contract with everybody else. So until we start getting past this free company idea, I apologize for the coughs, guys. Excuse me. I've been sick for like a week straight, maybe two. But until we start getting past the idea that these are free entities operating in a free environment, because they're not. Until we get past that, we have to start treating them the way we do cartels. Cartels that price fix. Cartels that set the rules of entry, because they literally are setting the rules of entry. Try to make your own bank. Try to do it. Honestly, the idea of making your own bank, I mean, you can start a local community bank. If you want to be profitable, you need to have about $50 to $100 million of deposits on hand. You can start mortgaging them out. But guess what you're doing? You have to participate in the banking system that exists by a bunch of private companies that have set the rules in a specific way. And if you don't play nice, you can't sell your mortgages. If you don't play nice, you can't buy other people's debt. If you don't play nice, you can't borrow overnight to make sure you hit the minimum federal funding rate for your deposit accounts. Because if you loan out money, for example, you say you have $100 million in deposits, you need to keep $20 million in cash on hand for your clients. If you don't have that, because one of your big customers comes out and withdraws a large amount of money, or you overlend, you take a risk, something like that, you might have to borrow from another bank who has an excess for their reserve limit. You borrow it overnight, you pay 1.25% on that money overnight because you need it to maintain your Fed minimums. Once you do that, if you can't do that as a bank, if you can't participate in that system, you're not a bank. You won't live. You will die. You'll die in your own branch. You'll never grow, and you can't lend. If you can't lend, you can't make money as a bank. So this all requires this free association, but it isn't free. That's the point I'm trying to stress to people. It's supported by government. It's supported by an oligopoly, and it's a cartel. You have to treat it like a banking cartel because that's what it is. Okay, that said, oh, and as I look into this, I found out today that MasterCard already owns the patents for payment processing systems that convert cryptocurrency into fiat currency. So if you think that crypto is the solution, I've got a warning for you. So does MasterCard. So does Visa. They do this every day. If you think it's a solution, so do they. And one thing they're going to try and do is monopolize that solution as fast as possible. And they're the companies that have already set up to deal with that system. And how they do it. Here's how they do it. They're not going to shut down crypto. Okay? They're not going to shut it down. But what they'll do is MasterCard, for example, is a payment processor that handles your grocery stores, your Walmarts, your Targets, okay? Now, when cryptocurrency hits the mainstream and you want to take your Ethereum and go buy your groceries, your grocer doesn't know how to process cryptocurrency. And to keep up on how to do that, they would need to either have some sort of expert on staff. They'll have to contract with a third-party expert to get advice, which is very expensive. Or what'll happen? Their existing payment processor, MasterCard, will say, no. We've got a handy solution that'll make cryptocurrency work in the same way that your other credit processing already does. We'll convert cryptocurrency at the current exchange rate on the second that it's applied or on some pre-agreed upon daily rate or something like that. We'll limit the fluctuation within a specific buffer so that you have a guarantee, and we'll take on that risk, right? Here's what they'll do. And they'll make it very easy for them to convert your Ethereum into dollars for your grocer. And your grocer won't have a way to accept Ethereum or Ripple or Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Whiskey Coin or any other coin that you want. They won't be able to accept your Dickles. They won't be able to accept anything because they can just take regular money and they don't have to staff a nerd to figure out how to process crypto. This is how they take over cryptocurrency. It's not by actually doing anything to the currency. It's about doing everything in between to make life as simple as possible for the people accepting money for their goods. And they don't want to make it difficult. They don't want to learn a new tech. They don't want to hire a guy to fix their problems. MasterCard will do it for them, and they'll give them a fair rate, probably the same or less than they're already paying on their credit card. Because if MasterCard can, for example, if MasterCard can guarantee a 0.5% fluctuation in the cryptocurrency that you're paying with, like they'll say, within an hour of your transaction, we'll guarantee a 0.5% fluctuation so you have predictable income. Guess what MasterCard's going to be doing? Making bank on the booms in crypto. That's what they'll do. Because they'll guarantee a 0.5% fluctuation either way, on the high end or the low end. And then when it goes up 1% or 2% over the course of an hour because of some big trade, MasterCard will make bank. They'll make bank. Anyway, I've been going back and forth on this for a long time. I need to go through. I just want to warn you that the banking system is far more complex, insular, and cartel-like than any of us, self-included, even realize. And hopefully I can get someone on to help explain it because we need something to happen. Right now, we don't have free companies freely associating. We have evidence that Patreon has been flexed on by MasterCard, for example. That may have been what happened with Sargon. That may actually be what happened with Sargon. If Patreon is flexed on by MasterCard or PayPal or Stripe, and they risk losing all of their credit processing if they don't get rid of one person, guess who's gone? Jihad Watch is gone. That actually happened. MasterCard can't defund Jihad Watch. MasterCard can defund all of the services that Jihad Watch uses, though. And they have to have the cartel. If they don't have the cartel, they don't have business. All right. Next. Sorry. The Cockmaster says, California here. I'm 19 and a firearm. We passed a law that bans FFLs from selling guns to those under 21, unless you're a cop, military, of course, a FUD. Goes into effect on the new year. We're too far gone. Just nuke my state and me with it. Sorry, buddy. I was covering a couple lawsuits that were challenging those bans in, I think, Washington State and Florida. Goodness gracious. I'll have to check in on those. That's ripe for a constitutional challenge. It really is. But, hey, Supreme Court dummies, you guys have to nut up and start taking Second Amendment cases again. Listen to Clarence Thomas. He called the Second Amendment a second-hand amendment because that's how the Supreme Court is treating it. It's under constant assault, and these cowards won't take a case on it. They need to. Trump needs to start flexing on them a little bit and saying, hey, you need to take cases on this. We need resolutions. We need the Supreme Court resolutions. All right. Next thing. Back to this article. I apologize for the tangents, but here we go. We're back in full tangent mode. Okay, so this is the appeal to the Second Amendment of the Constitution. For many, such appeals are based on the belief that the Second Amendment is sacrosanct and inviolate. Well, shall not be infringed. An almost religious militancy appears to be attached to this belief. As long as this belief persists, there seems to be virtually no hope of any form of intelligent, reasonable, and effective gun control. Yes, control means infringement by its nature, but you don't need a belief change to change it. You need a language change. Change the amendment. You can't do it. You don't have the support. The people won't rally behind that yet, and you know it. You have to change the amendment. You need a 8th? 30th? Is it 27 or 29? I should know this, but I don't. Who cares? You need a new amendment to change the language of the Second Amendment or to strike it entirely. Until you do that, all you're doing is setting up justices to make these weird proclamations about what the amendment means, which are clearly averse to what the amendment plainly means. It means there's an individual right to keep and bear arms that shall not be infringed. Shall not. But let's keep going. Since the Second Amendment purports to be a guarantee of rights and freedoms, no, it's not even a guarantee of rights and freedoms. It's a recognition that the right is inherent. It's an inherent right. The right to self-defense, self-ownership of whatever you really want. The right to protect your things. The right to use tools to weaponize. The right to fight back is inherent in the Second Amendment. Not just against your neighbor, but also against a tyrannical government. Bearing in mind, when they actually wrote this amendment, they had literally just done this to a country that tried to infringe upon those rights. It is a recordation. It's a recording of rights and freedoms that exist outside of the Constitution. It's not a guarantee of those rights. Those rights are guaranteed outside of it. It's a recognition. It says, by the way, just in case you thought this wasn't included, it is. It is. It seems reasonable to start the discussion with the Declaration of Independence and its Rights of Man preamble. What? No, it's not reasonable to start the discussion there. It's really not reasonable at all. It would be reasonable to start with the preamble of the Constitution specifically, but let's see where he goes with this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, great. Fantastic. Among these, not exclusively are, among these rights. But let's go on. This passage came to represent a moral standard to which the United States should strive. No! This passage comes to represent the legal standard by which we understand that rights exist outside of the pieces of paper, outside of proclamations of Parliament. We have a different system than the UK. Okay, if you happen to catch my interview months and months ago with Helen Dale, a UK attorney and free speech advocate, she explained that the power of Parliament in the UK is sacrosanct. They can't have a constitution because no act or law can bind Parliament from making a decision. So you can't have a thing that says Parliament can't pass a law saying that restricting gun rights or speech, because Parliament has plenary authority to legislate in the UK. In the US, it does not. In the US, our legislature is bound by the Constitution, an existing written law that guarantees a minimum standard that binds the government to a set of practices and principles that exist outside of any particular act of Congress that can only be changed with gravity and then buy-in from the states that are part of the Union. You can't just willy-nilly amend the Constitution for a reason. You can't do it because it's such a grave decision to set down lasting proclamations of what is right or good or guaranteed to people. So we don't have a legislative plenary authority like they do in Parliament in the UK. All right? And it's almost like the founders have a reason for that, right? It's almost like they were coming out of a system that they didn't like and made one that was very, very different and included these guarantees for giant self-serving morons like you, who think that these rights are just words on paper. They're not. They're not. Without these rights, we wouldn't have a country. The sentiment is supported in that Abraham Lincoln considered it to be the foundation of his political philosophy and argued that it is a statement of principles through which the United States Constitution should be interpreted. No! No! The sentiment is supported by its mere existence, written by one of the founders of the nation. What are you talking about? And agreed upon by several others, and then codified in the founding documents of our country. It's not just because Abraham Lincoln came along 100 years later, 90 years later, and said it as his political philosophy. It's part of the political history, the bedrock of American society. That's what gives it import, not Abe Lincoln. And argued that it is a statement of principles through which the United States Constitution should be interpreted. Keck7Go says, which is a more effective weapon against CPS? That's Child Protective Services. AR-15 or lawyer speak? Little of this, little of that, buddy. Little of this, little of that. And if you don't, again, when the guns go, your kids go. When the guns go, your children are gone. Like, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but you think that the fact that there's a gun behind every door doesn't keep that social worker from CPS give them 1 second thought about telling someone they're taking their kid? If you don't think that, I got news for you. And CPS is perhaps the most corrupt and disgusting government entity there is. For every good thing they do 100 things that are terribly damaging to children and families. And I hate CPS. I hate CPS. Okay. Now, let's get into the meat of this good argument you have. Oh, Tillip says, happy 31st birthday. Thanks, buddy. But it's actually my 37th. 37th. All right. So he says, now take a look at the first draft of the Second Amendment as written by the framers of the Bill of Rights. So here's the first draft. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Wait a minute. I don't think that's the first draft. Hold on. Hold on. No. He screwed up. I'll give him a pass on this because he actually gets it right in a second. That's not actually the first draft. That's what it ends up being, minus some commas. So you may not recognize it. But actually, he's got it wrong. Okay, this is a problem with these people, okay? This is a problem. I'm gonna breeze past this, but we're gonna come back and talk about how he's got the amendment wrong, because it's part of the whole problem that we have with this stuff. So he says the first draft is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Was it intended to be intentionally vague? Maybe. No, it's not vague. It's not vague at all. It says there was some effort to remove its seemingly dichotomous opening and closing phrases. They're not dichotomous. It's two separate clauses about two different things. He says the Senate took a crack at this. Like he acts like they gave it a college try and couldn't manage it. But that's not what happened. Let's analyze these words, okay? Guns, beer, freedom. You're not actually correct, because his draft there isn't the final draft. It's actually wrong, and it's not the first draft. He is right. There is a first draft that we're going to talk about in just a second, but he's got it wrong. So here's what it. Anyway, the Senate took a crack at this on September 9th, 1789. A proposal to insert the words "for the common defense" next to the words "bear arms" was defeated. This would have done the trick. No, it would have changed the phrase to what Congress didn't want, you dummy. The framers didn't want it to be "for the common defense" because that was inaccurate to the intention of protecting an individual right, which was recognized in basically every colony, basically every state at the time, which was recognized actually by major legal scholars in England as an individual right to bear arms. Blackstone, maybe you've heard of Blackstone, writes about the individual right of possession to keep and bear firearms, to keep and bear other arms. It goes beyond it. Read DC versus Heller, you educated twop. Twop? I was going to say a naughty word and I tried to stop myself. Anyway. All right. It was defeated. Yes, it was defeated because that wasn't the intent of the language. This would have done the trick, but the Senate instead, no, they didn't instead modify the language a bit and voted to send a slightly modified draft to the House. They did this on a different day, okay? A well-regulated militia, being the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, that was the first draft. I don't know how he got these mixed up. He said, the House voted on September 21st to accept the changes made by the Senate, but the amendment as finally entered into the House Journal contained the additional words necessary to, which gets us back to his original one, but he's missing commas. And I'm gonna show you the correct way it's listed. Actually, we'll just hold on. We'll get the actual Second Amendment pulled up here. Okay. So I got to calm down. Because this is such a frustrating topic. Okay. So he says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Wrong. Here's what it actually reads as. Do we have that in frame? Okay, down here. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed. All right. If you're going to write an article purporting to be learned on the Second Amendment, at least get the punctuation correct. Landon Mackinjames says, Nick, you're not allowed to go on vacation anymore. I missed you, buddy. I don't know what to do with my life after work without your streams. LMAO. Well, I'm back, and have I got some streams for you, friend? We've got lots of streams. We're even going to cross the streams. Okay, so let's move on. That's the actual wording. They're upside down apostrophes. All right. So here we go. On December 15th, 1791, the Bill of Rights was adopted, having been ratified by 3/4 of the states. It may be surmised that both the House and Senate either figured the wording of the Second Amendment was clear. I mean, I guess it might be surmised that they thought it was clear, considering they had ample opportunity between 1789 and 1791 to modify the language that was ratified then by 3/4 of the states. So it's not just the House and the Senate. It's also the 3/4 of the states who thought it was just fine. And thought that for the common good qualifier was obvious. You didn't have for the common good qualifier. You put for the common defense. But it wasn't obvious. It was rejected. It was voted against. They proposed it. Someone's like, do we want for the common defense? And they said, no. Not because they're like, well, that's just the reasonable assumption of everything. But because what they wrote was what they intended. That's what they wanted. Not this other thing that didn't come to be. An amendment was proposed. The amendment was rejected. That's how these processes work. It doesn't actually mean that Congress or the Senate or the House wanted it. It means that someone proposed it and they didn't want it as a collective. All right. To add it might have seemed a bit insulting to an intelligent readership. No. Where are you reading into this? It had nothing to do with insulting an intelligent readership. What it had to do with was that the common understanding in 1789 all the way to 1791 was that literally everybody had a gun. Literally every male. Actually, in many states, every male 15 or older not only had a gun, they were legally obligated to own a gun. They had to have one in case they were called for the common defense, because the militia, the well-regulated militia, was every able-bodied male 15 to, I think, 45. Everyone had a gun. Most of them had it on them. The people in this room probably had dueling pistols strapped to their person just in case. You're talking about guys like Hamilton, Burr, Jefferson, men who literally shot other men over disputes, men who fired over words, resolved disputes with bullets, right? That's who we're talking about. All of these guys had guns. All of them. And if they didn't have guns, they likely had a sword or a knife, a long knife, a killing knife, a dueling knife, for example, because not all duels were gunfire. These guys kept and bared arms constantly. Many of them would have to have those weapons on them because had they been caught by England while discussing some of this stuff just a few years earlier, they would be hanged for sedition or treason. The idea that this idiot is reading in his 21st century California liberal sensibility back on men who killed an entire army over a 2% T tax. Like, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. And I can't take it. I can't understand that the people can be this dumb. Okay. All these guys are squall running around with their gun knives, their gun swords back in the late 1700s. Yorgamund 07. Not only were they required to have guns, in some states like New York, you could claim poverty and the state would give you a free gun. Exactly. Because you needed a gun to eat, especially the further west you went. And by farther west, we're talking Kentucky, Tennessee, the Carolinas, the western half of Virginia. Like, you had to kill your food. You had to have a gun. You had to protect yourselves from the Indians, right? The Native Americans, the indigenous persons, whatever you want to call them, the Washington Redskins. You had to protect yourselves from them because oftentimes when you're claiming land, you might infringe on a territorial right and they might say try to murder your family, or you might want to murder their family and take over the property that they don't claim ownership to but they occupy. Okay? All sorts of reasons to have guns in 1770. And maybe you disagree with how they did that then, and you don't think we need it now. Fine, change the amendment. But don't pretend that these guys understood anything different than what was frickin' written down and is plainly obvious. Reading into it is the fallacy, not reading it facially. Because these guys argued and debated and voted and then ratified by a bunch of other guys who all understood what was on that paper. To pretend that they were all rubes or they just left something out, just unintentionally, shucks. We really wanted that for the common defense, which you later say for the common good, you commie. They really wanted it in there, but we just couldn't get it done. No, that's because all of their colleagues didn't want it in there. Okay. So far, so good. I can see no conflict between the Second Amendment as written and the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness proviso in the Declaration of Independence. Why don't you talk about, if we're going back to original intent, why don't you remove pursuit of happiness and replace it with pursuit of property? Because that's what they meant. That's what they meant, pursuit of property. And by the way, you know what the Virginians were talking about with that pursuit of property? Using guns to keep slaves. Because that was property too. All right. There's nothing in the amendment that explicitly empowers people to own guns unless as part of the well-organized state militia. No. It's a prefatory clause. A prefatory clause. Well-regulated militia. Being necessary to the security of a free state. That's prefatory. It comes before the important statement, but it doesn't modify or control the following clause. The operative clause is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This has been Englished out of its mind by all sorts of experts. Go read DC versus Heller. Even though Scalia screws up half the opinion, this part he got right because he borrowed it from all sorts of language experts who came in and talked about the difference between a prefatory clause and an operative clause in a compound sentence. They're saying a well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But even if we take your dumb argument at face value, all of the men are the well-regulated militia. All of them. All of the men are the well-regulated militia. The well-regulated part, that whole bit was an authorization of Congress to go ahead and train a militia. and they would have monthly training sessions where you'd go and meet your militia mates and you'd run some basic exercises, do a little bit of marksmanship training with the gun that you brought with you, that you basically are required to own or are often provided by the state, as Jorgamund 07 mentioned. All of this is even contemplated in your misconstrued view of what was going on. It doesn't mean you had to be part of some militia group. You were part of the militia group. And by the way, you still are. If you register for the selective service, like every man aged 18 who's a U.S. citizen has to do, you are in the well-regulated militia. Congratulations. You now have an inalienable right to own a firearm. Go figure. Sorry, women. You should have gotten that in the 19th Amendment when you got the right to vote. But you didn't want that. So maybe women don't have a right to own guns. How about we go back to that? Would that please your little sensibilities? I don't even remember this chump's name. Darking D says, all those guys were pussies. Jackson killed people mostly because he was insane. Yes, Andrew Jackson was definitely insane. Matthew Gervais says, I think it was Jefferson. He said that the second protected private citizenships having cannons, let alone guns. Yes, the cannons of the Revolutionary War were borrowed from private owners. The fleets, the warships that were used in the Revolutionary War, the War of, I think, 1812, the Barbary pirate conflicts that we had, all of that stuff, those are private ships with cannons on them. The greatest weapons in existence at the time of the ratification of the Constitution were warships. Warships armed with cannons that could lay siege to port cities. Port cities being the most important economic centers in the 1700s because they're the only way to affect trade internationally. All of that stuff was privately owned. The U.S. government didn't own warships. They borrowed them from rich people and private companies. The idea, if you think the founders would be opposed to a nuke being privately owned, I got news for you. The nukes of the 1700s were privately owned. All of this. All of this. Okay. He makes a bold claim here. Makes a bold claim. I wish Scalia were alive to talk to this guy. This was apparently missed by 5 cerebrally constipated members of our Supreme Court who chose in 2008. They just chose it willy-nilly. You know, no authority, no expert opinions, no research legal documents, no teams of assistants, no no research staffs looking into this. They just willy-nilly decided in 2008 to rule that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with the service in militia. For future reference, I'll call this the unconnected rule. Buddy, the only thing disconnected from you is your penis. At this point, what even are you? What even are you? Because not only, if you go through that opinion, will you find it linked back to cases that predate the United States, all recognizing individual rights to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia. But you'll also realize how stupid it is when you go look up the U.S. Code definition of the militia and you find out that you're in it right now. Landon Mackinjames says, do you own a gun, Nick? Because I know you are a rage and you are a law, as I am, is, and are an autism. And I is anime critic. I own several guns and they all, again, I've said this on several streams, tragically fell into a lake on a boating accident. I don't remember. Due to my narcolepsy, I was not awake at the time and don't remember what lake I was on, but they're all gone. Sorry. I would love to own guns, but I keep losing them in lakes. as well as all my ammo. Darking D says, Rackets, are you telling me to make a suitcase bomb? Because I'm hearing a licensed lawyer telling me that making a suitcase bomb is covered by the second. No, I'm not telling you to do that. That would be legal advice that I cannot give. Although I would highly suggest that a suitcase bomb would be regulated as a dangerous, unusual item under the, what I would consider, unconstitutional National Firearms Act. However, it is not recognized as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So I would argue that you should check with your local ATF and local legal counsel to find out if you should make a suitcase bomb or not. Guns, Beer, Freedom 87. Fun fact, the U.S. is still the only major nation that maintains the right to issue letters of marque, meaning they still think we can legally own private warships. Gosh, now I have a new life goal. Can I crowdfund a private warship? Of course, if I owned a private warship, it would probably end up at the bottom of a lake. All right. With the unconnected rule, they somehow missed the intent of the originally proposed phrase for the common defense. Listen here, you dumb pile of trash. That wasn't the originally proposed phrase. The originally proposed phrasing is basically what we got, except for the necessary to that was added later. And that's in the prefatory clause. The proposed phrase may as well be rejected or labeled the rejected modification of the originally proposed phrase. Because that intent was rejected. I don't know how you missed this, you stupid pile of garbage. You can take your PhD and wipe my butt with it because that's all it's good for. Okay. And the stated well-regulated militia requirement. It's not a requirement. If it was a requirement, they would have written the well-regulated militia shall keep and bear arms, not the right of the people to keep and bear arms. Both of which seem to hold the key and actual intent of the framers, to the actual intent of the framers. No, you've read that into it. You've created this. The framers didn't. They had the opportunity to do it and did not. Sorry, my blood pressure. My blood pressure through the friggin' roof. All right. We're going to go on to some whiskey. Guys, I have another story after this to cover. Not a story to tell, a story to cover. And it pisses me off too. Fun fact, I went to Hawaii, stood on top of a mountain, and just screamed for 7 straight days. I'm just kidding. That's not a fact. That's a lie. Okay. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Okay. Listen to this. So, his next line is particularly offensive. Did the feeble 5 miss the fact that a well-regulated militia, comma, you chode, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed, are 2 phrases of a single sentence separated by a comma, no less? Actually, there are 3 commas in that sentence. There are 3. Not 1. But here's the problem. He calls them the feeble 5. Now, I will make fun of Supreme Court justices and their stupid opinions, or the necromancy, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you baby sacrificing necromantic lich. I will make fun of them all day. I spent a lot of time and money earning the right to disagree with a Supreme Court justice. Okay? I did the research. I know at least that there are 3 commas in the Second Amendment, not 1. If nothing else, I know that. This guy did not. So, I do not want him calling the 5 conservative justices the feeble 5. I don't want him calling the 4 liberal justices the fruitcake 4. He has no idea. Any one of the 9 justices who ruled in DC versus Heller is 10,000% the constitutional scholar that guy is. If you haven't gone through law school or done significant extracurricular study on constitutional law, specifically Second Amendment history, then you don't have any right to call any of them stupid. I mean, you have the right to say it, of course, but you don't have the credibility to back up your words. You're just a toothless aging hooker sucking on knobs that you don't deserve or whatever it is. I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to be more offensive. He didn't earn this. He doesn't have the knowledge. He's demonstrating that he doesn't have the knowledge to do it. And so it really pisses me off to see him criticizing 5 people who are far and away better constitutional scholars than he ever will be, who did far and away more research. And you can just read Scalia's opinion to find out how many experts were brought into this case. You can go read all of the amicus briefs that were submitted in DC versus Heller, and they are voluminous, to find many, many more constitutional scholars on both sides who are much better at this than this twerp. Did they also miss that this sentence construction was obviously intended by the framers? You did. You missed it because you're saying that the words that they rejected should be included. Were they also not aware that the judgment of said framers was not colored by pressure from the NRA? The NRA has no authority over Supreme Court justice. They don't have the power to vote on a Supreme Court justice. They don't have the power to impeach a Supreme Court justice. They don't even have the power to criticize a Supreme Court justice. And they're not very good at it. The NRA can just choke on all the gun barrels in the world for all I care. They're a terrible organization when it comes to actually protecting individual rights. They're very good at protecting gun manufacturers and the gun lobby. Great, fine. They're stupid when it comes to speech, when it comes to video games, when it comes to movies, when it comes to anything outside of a very narrow interpretation of what the Second Amendment protects. The NRA can get bent. They can go straight to hell. You go to hell and you die. And that they were inherently wiser and smarter than themselves. Hey, buddy, I wish you were wiser and smarter than yourself and you could write a less ambiguous phrase. They were inherently wiser and smarter than themselves. Which they are you referring to in each of those instances, you dummy? Presumably, in an attempt to avoid embarrassment, the court ruled that the justification for the unconnected rule was the supposition that the right to bear arms as part of a well-regulated militia somehow included the use of firearms for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. No. What they're saying is that a protected right, so long as it's used for a traditionally lawful purpose, is protected. If you try and use a protected right for a traditionally unlawful purpose, it's not protected. If I try and use my free speech right to defame someone, it's not protected speech because defamation isn't protected. That's not protected because that is infringing on the right of another person. If I use my speech as a weapon, it is not protected. So long as that weapon is unjustly or unlawfully used, right? Defamation, slander, libel. How else can I put this? If I try and use my right to be free from search and seizure to unlawfully obscure a fact that it should be legally obtainable through reasonable search and seizure, then I'm going beyond the protection of the right. Okay? So what they're recognizing is that self-defense is a traditionally lawful purpose. It's a lawful purpose that predates this document. Self-defense is an inherent right. It's part of life and liberty and the pursuit of property and happiness. I have to tell a grown man this, guys. I have to tell this to a grown, educated man. The lawful purpose of self-defense is protected as it is a lawful purpose. That's all they're doing there. They're recognizing a specific lawful purpose. But you know what else is a lawful purpose? Owning it because you want it. Collecting it. Putting it on your wall. Mounting it on the frame of your bike to ride around like a crazy man. Putting it in the back of your car or your buggy. Traditionally lawful purpose. Stagecoaches in the 1700s all had a coach gun. All of them. Because if you were a rich person taking a stagecoach, your coach driver better have a coach gun to defend you from a bandit. Keeping and bearing arms in your vehicle is much more traditionally sound than not keeping and bearing arms in your vehicle. Those shotgun racks on the back of trucks have way more historical basis than anything Dopey McDopeson here is saying. All of these are legal purposes. Juggling guns is a legal purpose. You can juggle them. Eating ammunition is legal. Whatever you want to do, so long as you're not murdering someone or firing in a way that recklessly endangers someone else, this is all a traditionally lawful purpose. I mean, you have to go seriously beyond the bounds of traditional gun use to get outside of a typically lawful purpose. The fact that this guy is criticizing their understanding while being so obtuse that he doesn't get it is maddening. All right. Let's see what he says now. I haven't even read this far. I'm so ticked off reading each new phrase. The traditionally lawful qualifier and the unconnected rule are not in any way included in the Second Amendment. No, you idiot. It's just part of all constitutional analysis that it has to be a lawful purpose to protect it. You have to have a lawful purpose. Free speech is protected so long as it's lawful. Here's one. Your right to own a gun for the unlawful purpose of attempting to overthrow the government can be infringed. It can. And by overthrow the government, I don't actually mean overthrow the government. I mean treason. I mean providing aid and material aid and comfort to an enemy of the United States. That would be an unlawful purpose. To own a gun so that you could give it to Al Qaeda. Unlawful purpose. That's not a Second Amendment right. Not at all. For you to take up arms against the United States, an unlawful purpose. That you don't have a Second Amendment right to do that. Now, it does protect us from tyrants, right? So don't misread my words. The founders absolutely contemplated the fact that the populace might have to rise up against a tyrannical government, in which, by the way, they expected George Washington to be a king and rule for life, a period of 4-year terms until he died was the expectation. It's not we got, it's they expected, but they did expect the possibility of a multi-term president becoming a tyrannical ruler. They expected that, and they thought, it would be unlawful to take up arms against the United States, but they might have to do it, and they want the people to have arms in case they needed to. All right. The traditionally lawful qualifier and the unconnected rule are not in any way included in the Second Amendment. Moreover, the traditionally lawful qualifier is worthless since traditionally lawful intent can be falsely claimed by anyone to legally obtain a gun for whatever reason. No, what you're missing is that whatever reason is traditionally lawful. They don't have to give you a reason. There is no reason to own a gun. There's no reason. I can buy all of them. I can make a carpet out of guns if I want. I can mount them on my wall. I can strap them to cats. It doesn't matter what my reason is to own a gun. You dope. That's what you're missing. That's what you're missing. Including gunning down students in classrooms. No, that's a separate issue from owning the gun. You have the right to own the gun. You don't have a right to gun down students in a classroom. That's a different act. Bagel Goose says, within the law macaws, feathers are rustled. I'm gonna legal you, buddy. Brad Burns says, so you're saying the founding fathers predicted FDR? Yes, absolutely. George Washington taking 2 terms was unexpected by the founding fathers. They're coming off of lifelong monarchies. They certainly wanted people to have an opportunity to go away. But FDR is the reason we have a 2-term presidency. That amendment passed after FDR, thank God, died. Terrible president. Stood for nothing. Absolutely nothing. Washington taking 2 terms. You can debate it. Actually, Stefan Molyneux has a really interesting perspective on the truth about George Washington. I highly recommend watching Stefan Molyneux's Truth About George Washington. Not saying it's a correct approach to George Washington, but it's an alternative viewpoint that tempers the view of who he was with some counter facts and counter statements and evidence by a non-propagandized machine. It's very interesting, seemingly well researched. I don't know, but go watch that at some point. It's really great. It doesn't mean he's right, but it does give you a little bit of a second opinion about the founding, the first president that's a little different from the narrative. Okay. All right. Can be falsely claimed by anyone to legally obtain a gun for whatever reason, including gunning down students in classrooms, slaughtering concert goers, or murdering anyone else whose life can be ended with the pull of a trigger. Oh, buddy. Nomini et Patria et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. I gotta bless my words here. I gotta bless my words. Okay, unfortunately, such violations of the qualifier can only be obtained after the fact. Yes, that's how rights work. You have them until you lose them because of something you did. There's no other way to protect rights than to actually protect them until someone makes the decision and then gets that other pesky right, due process, that other amendment that you're ignoring, the due process to have their fundamental right infringed by the state requires due process, which means something has to happen to merit the loss of a right. Because otherwise it's not a right, it's a privilege. I gotta email this guy, I guess, right? Should we do that? Should I live construct an email to this dummy? Oh, Howard Castrop. Bagel Goose says, anyone's life can be ended by tripping. Ban moving. Yes, no more moving allowed. Okay. There is therefore a clear conflict between the right afforded by the traditionally lawful qualifier and the rights of gunshot victims to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yes, there absolutely is. In that infringing on the life of someone is not traditionally lawful. So at that point, there's a conflict of rights. Your right to keep and bear arms, then mitigated by an unlawful purpose, which is murdering someone else, and then your right to life. Those two things come into conflict there, and the state will weigh the right to life higher than JoJo's right to murder people every time. Every single time, the state will say, this person's right to live was greater than that person's right to own a gun. That's why felons, all felons, by the way, which I think is absolutely wrong and a violation of the Second Amendment, but all felons lose their right to own a gun. All of them. Now, all felons should not lose their right to own a gun. Period. Tax evasion is not a right to, it does not mean you lose your right to own a gun. But, yes, people who murder other people no longer able to own a gun. We're typically okay with that as a society. Maybe there's a time limit on which that happens after they get out of jail and probation. Maybe they should be able to own a gun. But certainly during the time they're serving their punishment, no gun. Their right is mitigated by the fact that they committed traditionally unlawful behavior. Ed Muzed says, M. Muzid says, free speech protects hate speech because no one cares about love speech. Absolutely. Okay. But wait, isn't this guy the kind of walking reproductive organ that would argue that freedom of speech isn't freedom from private consequences? It's only the state infringing your rights that's the problem, right? Doesn't that include life? By logic, it must. Like you have the right to life, but it only matters if the state takes it away, right? That's the only time we care, because we only care when the state infringes upon your free speech, right? Right, dummy? We only care when the state says no guns, because if a private business says no guns, that's just fine. It's actually not, by the way. It's actually not. But we only care when the state does it, right? You don't support gun-free zones in private companies because it's not the state taking away a right in that instance. But you seem to care, or wait, no, you probably do support private entities doing it there. But do you on free speech? Do you on speech, you coward? Kex7 Go says, you're not drunk enough to compose an email. That may be true. That may be true. All right. Given the high importance of these rights to the framers of the Constitution, if you think they would endorse the traditionally lawful excuse and the unconnected rule as viable corrections to the Second Amendment, they're not corrections. You dummy. Are you going to tell us that the framers, who literally fought a war against their parent country for taxes, are going to agree with your California sensibilities? Is that the argument you're about to make? If so, you're the dumbest person on the planet at this point. Then you believe in fairy tales. Oh, buddy, I think you might be the one chasing fairy tales right now. Given the recent horrendous consequences of gun use, we can no longer afford to govern by fairy tale. That's what you're advocating, fam. That's what you're advocating. God. Oh. Is this turd bag on Twitter? I'll know it by the PhD in his Twitter handle. Oh. He's not on Twitter? Is this guy even a real person? He can't be. He can't be writing articles to bakersfield.com if he's not on Twitter. How am I supposed to make fun of this guy? Oh, I'll have to find his email address. Okay. He owns a company, so it shouldn't be too hard. Darking D says, the Constitution exists to protect us from the state. The state protects us from each other. There you go. There you go. Okay. However, you feel about gun ownership as a hobby or otherwise. Wait a minute. Is this a long con by Landau? The punctuation in this is so bad. He's got, you don't need a comma after however, Howard. Maybe you should have been a PhD in English. However you feel about gun ownership as a hobby or otherwise, it is clear the Second Amendment, as interpreted by the 2008 Supreme Court, is a seriously bad mistake rather than a cherished fundamental American icon justifying indiscriminate gun ownership. I'll agree with him because Heller doesn't protect your right to own an AR-15, only a handgun. And that's stupid. Scalia, you're dead and you're bad. Bad Scalia. I'm going to dig you up. I'm going to get a rolled up newspaper and I'm going to swat your skull on its place where its nose should be. Bad Scalia. Should have protected all guns, you dummy. What's wrong with you? And hand grenades. Why can't I own hand grenades? I got to pay a $200 tax per grenade? You dead fatso. If you need an authority for this, look elsewhere. The most true statement this guy has said is that if you need an authority for this, look elsewhere. Now, he may think that the way he constructed this paragraph, that he's talking about the 2008 decision for DC versus Heller, but we know that was his self-cuckatron that's built into all dummies. That's the self-cuckatron which makes them write a sentence that is so blissfully and scathingly self-critical that they don't even realize it. Your self-cuckatron done cucked you wrong, Howard Kastrup, you stupid pile of garbage. What on earth were you thinking writing that sentence? If you need an authority for this, look elsewhere. Yeah, anywhere else. Anywhere other than Howard Kastrup would be a great place to start if you want to learn about the Second Amendment. Oh my goodness, what a dummy. I'm going to find him. Let's dox Howard Kastrup. Here we go. Owner and chief scientist. All right. Email address. Let me get my email pulled up here. Compose. All right. Think I can put this on screen? Okay. 2. Where's this dummy's email address? Hold on. Here we go. Nope. I gotta fix it. Oh, dang it. I can't just copy and paste it because he put a period after it. H. Kastrup. Making me type while drinking is not fair, fam. isgmax.com. All right. Subject. The Human Shrug says 144 million gun owners didn't harm anyone today. That's right. American gun owners did nothing wrong. Darking D says, I hate the NFA. It's not even the prohibition on explosives and sawed-offs that's inconvenient, but they're literally trying to ban automatics by phasing them out of ownership. Also, you missed one of my chats. I did? Oh my gosh. Oh, I did. I see it. I got it. Thank you. I'll get to it in just a second. Gunsbeer Freedom 87 says, where does this $200 tax come from? I'm sure plenty of people are curious. Yes, USV Miller, 1939. Thank you. $19.39 donation. Gunsbeer Freedom 87. Thank you so much. Yes, it's USV Miller, 1939. One of a terrible Supreme Court ruling that needs to be undone. It is poorly founded. And I mentioned earlier that I don't want to go through it on this stream because because of you, buddy, because of you, I want to do USV Miller all the justice I can and give it a full, thorough, concentrated analysis. Kirk Nollingwood says, Nick, get on Indiegogo for that self-cuckatron. All right. Back to Darking D. I missed this and I apologize. He says, you should feel honored, Rackets. It isn't often someone is able to see the strange and mysterious Dunning-Kruger. Yes, Dunning-Kruger is in full effect today on this guy. Okay, whoops, not what I wanted. That was my thumbnail folder. You're welcome. Okay, so subject. Your recent article on the Second Amendment. Fairy tale. Dr. Kastrup. You got to be properly respectful to these people, right? Okay, Dr. Kastrup. I recently read your article on the Second Amendment, fairy tale, and am fascinated by your analysis. I run a YouTube channel with approximately 15,000 subscribers. Guys, don't make me a liar. Subscribe, like, share, favorite, whatever you need to do. Help me get to 15,000 before the end of the year. That'd be amazing. We've got, 13 days left and about 700 subscribers to go. Help me out. Don't make me a liar to this guy. I respect him very much. I run a YouTube channel with approximately 15,000 subscribers. I'm an attorney in Minnesota and have some questions about your analysis and the research you have done on the subject. I would love to have you on my show to discuss this issue. Let me be upfront. I disagree with your premises in the article, but would love to have an honest debate and discussion about the issue on my show. Please let me know if you would be into having this discussion to an audience, to an engaged audience who have diverse views on the subject. Thank you, or sincerely, Nick Rekieta. Rekieta Law. All right. Invite him and his wife's son. Okay. Evan Robinson, you got unsubscribed? That, in all honesty, several accounts did get unsubscribed. There was a reaping where they determined some accounts to be spam accounts just a couple days ago. It made me mad because on Social Blade, it was the first day I've lost subscribers I think since I've ever checked. So it was very frustrating for me. And I also know that I'm not followed by a bunch of bots. And I certainly wouldn't pay for subscribers. So it was annoying. But like I said, everybody lost subscribers that day. It was nuts, except for Legal Eagle, that scumbag. He must buy the good subs. Did I say that? That's rude. All right. Put the Esquire in there. Oh, I should have done that. I forgot. Okay. Wait a minute. I didn't want to do that. Where are we? Where did my... Oh, I done ruined it. Let's see. Yeah, doxing Vox Day. I am. Like I said before, I had a good conversation with Vox Day earlier. I guess I'll have to go in and edit that. How annoying. How annoying. Oh, boy. Okay. What was next? Darking D says, translation, I know I'll destroy you, so come walk into the line of fire. Yeah, I mean, maybe. Landon Magan James says, whoa, slow down, Nick. I still got an hour drive. I need to get drunk with you so I can procrastinate editing my new video. Let's get slammed, sensei. Oh, and all-out bubblegum. Thank you. It says, how can the private ownership of firearms be regulated by a state constitution if the federal constitution forbids it? Since that is not in the purview of the state's power to have, only the federal has that power. Well, state constitutions are not allowed to restrict rights beyond what the U.S. Constitution protects. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Let me rephrase it a different way. Oh, that was redundant. Dang it. Okay. The U.S. Constitution. Oh, blurry cam. The U.S. Constitution guarantees a minimum standard of rights. It's a minimum level. State constitutions can protect more rights than the federal. They cannot protect less rights than the federal. And that's ever since Reconstruction, after about 1868 with the passage of the 14th Amendment. So a state constitution technically cannot regulate, it cannot regulate a firearm below the minimum threshold of the federal constitution. But the federal constitution has been so mitigated by the courts, starting in 1939, and then moving on through that what it actually protects now is seriously just a handgun, almost exclusively, which is just insane to think about, that it's just handguns that are protected now because of Scalia's opinion in DC versus Heller. I think that's incomplete, but we need another major Supreme Court ruling on the Constitution to deal with that misconception. Cave says, I just subbed with my 4 other alt accounts. I'm not sure if people know this, but people can make as many alt accounts as they want and sub to any channel they want many times. Well, thanks, buddy. You were thinking about New York State. Does their state constitution... I don't think their state constitution prohibits the ownership of guns. Their legislature does do that. Their legislature, they're trying to restrict gun ownership in various ways. And theoretically, were that to go to the Supreme Court, they would lose. However, the Supreme Court has declined to take gun cases, major gun cases, for like the past 3 or 4 sessions. And it's really, really offensive at this point. Okay, I'm going to see if I can find the article about oh, excuse me, 3D printed guns. This isn't even it. But let's take a look at this because this is important. No, this is not important. Go away. Get the... Oh, disgusting. Oh, look at all these pop-ups. What? I'm old. Are you kidding me? Following laptop models have you heard of? All of them? None of the above. Die. Oh my God. Most likely to buy. None. Oh, good. I get 5 free articles for that. Oh, God. What a disaster. Okay. Guns, Beer, Freedom. Whoa, buddy. Thank you. He says, sorry I have to take off. That's a big donation, pal. $50. Thank you so much. Sorry I have to take off. It's been a lot of fun. Happy birthday and Merry Christmas. I look forward to many more streams, buddy. You and me have to hit the range one of these days. Yes, with my guns reclaimed from an unnamed Great Lake. Yeah, we'll go fishing and then we'll go shooting. Darking D says, I'd really love to see Trump instruct the DOJ to challenge the Hughes Amendment because he would almost certainly win. That'd be very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Get uBlock. It works. A lot of things work, Molly McAllister. Thank you very much for your donation. But you underestimate my boomerness. Use your Tor browser and connect from Bulgaria. I have Brave browser that I could do Tor on, but I just didn't for this because I didn't expect to get lambasted by ads. I wasn't going to go to this website. Just a second. This is a treat. This is some Hennessy cognac. Speaking of Hennessy, maybe this is racist. I don't know. I've been requested by my artist, the Rekieta Law artist. Not the artist formerly known as Rekieta Law. That's me. But no, my friend who does my art, and he's more than just an artist. I don't know what to call him. He's like a producer, except he doesn't produce the show, but he helps me out. We'll call him a contributor or producer to the show. He has suggested I cover Soulja Boy's video game console. So I think that is on the horizon as well. Felix Walken, I'll look into uBlock. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this. So there's also been news in the 3D printing world because, as you know, with technology, we're moving away from the idea that you have to go to some regulated company to buy your goods, right? All over American life, you have the ability to make your own goods, right? You can make your own rat poison, and it's not federally regulated if you make your own rat poison. And you can't feed it to a kid in a nursery, obviously, but you can make your own rat poison. You can actually make your own medications. Homeopathic remedies are a real thing. You don't need a private company, and you don't need the state to do this stuff. This is part of freedom. It's the ability to make your own junk, whatever it may be, and however bad it may be. what you can't do necessarily is sell it to someone else, because like then they start to go, okay, well, wait a minute. Is this guy selling something that will like kill a bunch of children? Like you press the button and school children just blow up. I don't know. It's a bunch of necklaces that have bombs in them. Who knows? See, oh, whew. Some jokes I don't know when to keep in and when to let go. But it's like, it's like friendship necklaces made by Al Qaeda. You give them out to all your friends in the classroom, and then you go home and press the button, and poof, there they go. There they go. But you can make your own stuff, all right? Part of that is the ability to manufacture your own gun. Really, really legal to manufacture your own gun. Not really legal to sell your own gun. Try making your own whiskey. Good one, 1, 2. Yeah, not everything. Not everything. Wow. Molly McAllister. Thank you very much for that very, very large super chat. Let's see. The 10th Amendment declares anything not delegated to the federal government is relegated to the local governments and or the individual. Given that, how strong a case is there for arguing that the Second Amendment reserves gun regulation to the federal level? Oh, yes. The Second Amendment gun regulation is absolutely done at the federal level. Let me put it that way. However, in a bizarre turn of events, the feds have allowed states to regulate interstate commerce, which they don't do often, but they allow them to do that on guns. But it's because they're not regulating the sale of a firearm. They're regulating the licensure to own a firearm, which is mildly different. It's, sorry. Whew. It's mildly different. And it's, the answer to your question should be, it is plenary authority of U.S. Congress to have any potential to regulate gun ownership. That's what the answer should be. Because through the 14th Amendment, the Second Amendment applies to states and municipalities. That's how it should be. I would love to answer your question in the way it would be answered for every other amendment but the second. But the second is the redheaded ginger stepchild with no soul of amendments. And it's because we've got Supreme Court justices who are afraid to say, too bad. Too bad, that's not how amendments work. Too bad, that's not how rights work. Because they have to say it to someone who's holding a dead kid, a metaphorical dead kid, a real dead kid, but they're not actually holding the dead kid. They're carrying the baggage of a dead child in their arms, right? They have to say it to them, and Supreme Court justices are human. They're not Mark Zuckerberg. They're not androids incapable of emotion. Would that they were in some ways. So they've mitigated the Second Amendment's protections. But it should be that Congress is the only body with any authority to do it. And it says not to. That's what it should be. But if we put it on par with other amendments, like the first, we would say that there are times where Congress, like if we're being the most deferential possible, we would say that there are times where Congress could regulate the Second Amendment in ways like they regulate the First Amendment, but only upon strict scrutiny. So we're talking to fulfill a compelling government interest, like the safety and security or the health and well-being of its citizens. Compelling government interest. The life of its citizens, I should say, not the health and well-being. The life of its citizens is a compelling government interest. And then it would have to be the least restrictive means possible to achieve that compelling government interest. So for speech, what we do is we limit only a very specific amount of speech. For example, the disclosure of top secret information by people who have access to top secret information. They can't do that. It's content-based speech. It's subject to strict scrutiny, but we say national security concerns in this narrow instance trump the right of the person to say this speech. So they have given up the right to talk about the national security concern that is labeled top secret. We can do that with guns. And we do that with this person murdered someone else. So they have given up their right to have a gun because we don't want them to murder another person. But that's only upon due process and only upon strict scrutiny and only the least restrictive means. So if we're just restricting one person's individual right for a set amount of time because of something they did, that's not infringing on the rights of the people or even the greater right of the person. It's relegated to a specific activity and a consequence of that activity. So I wish I could say it was treated like every other right. You can make a great argument about it, but the Supreme Court has been remiss in applying any arguments to the Second Amendment since 2010, I think, was the last major ruling. Maybe 2014, but I think it's 2010. And they've really got a problem. They're going to have to do that at some point. All Out of Bubblegum says, I was thinking of states like New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Virginia. I know that New Jersey is very strong, hard to hunt for firearms control. Yes, actually, one of the articles I didn't pull up was New Year in New Jersey, 8 new firearms regulations. At some point, these should be constitutionally challenged. But again, the Supreme Court just isn't taking these cases. Delicious cognac. Thank you, Molly McAllister. Again, thank you so much for that very generous super chat. I hope that answered your question. If not, make sure and tag me if there's some further clarification. Otherwise, I'm going to get back to talking about 3D printed guns. So where I was before, 3D printed guns. It used to be a thing that you could make. You didn't have to buy things from someone else. You could make them. 3D printed guns brings the means of production right into the hands of the person, the individual. If you buy a proper 3D printer, the proper plastics or metallics that your 3D printer can utilize, and then, of course, the CAD files. Delicious Kanye. Yes, thank you. And, of course, the CAD files, or you develop them yourself that allow your 3D printer to actually create the firearm you're looking to create, then you should be able to create a gun. You can actually take a piece of metal and with your CNC machine or your hand tools or whatever, your metal file, a lot of work, you can actually make a gun. It is perfectly legal to make a firearm. You just can't transfer it to someone else without getting it registered and serialized and all that stuff. So you can make a firearm today. It can look just like an AR-15. It can operate just like an AR-15. You can buy an 80% completed receiver. But even beyond that, you can just take metal and mill it down and make a gun. 3D printer makes it easier for people to do that for guns of limited purpose because a 3D printed gun has less structural integrity than a manufactured steel gun, right? Like obviously a plastic gun is going to have less integrity than a carbon steel gun. However, they're getting better. Doesn't mean they're one-shot wonders or anything like that. They have multiple firearms. They're getting better every day. Better designs, better materials. Doesn't matter. You've been able to make that. Traditionally, you've been able to make whatever you want, basically. You can make a car. You may not be able to drive that car all over the town on the roads. Driving is not a fundamental right, by the way. Gun ownership is. But they're trying to limit 3D printing now. Okay. So untraceable guns in the sights of Maryland legislators. Okay. This is, of course, a ruse because untraceable guns have been illegal for a very long time. Oh, Ryan English says, if I have a right to bear arms, can I somehow convince the state to buy me a gun, please? No, it says you have the right to keep and bear arms. It does not say you have the right to ownership of okay. Your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Remembering that the Bill of Rights is a list of negative protections negative rights. It's protections from the state to infringe upon you. It is not a guarantee of positive rights. FDR wanted to impose a positive Bill of Rights. That is socialism. That's the South African Constitution that Ruth Bader Ginsburg from beyond the grave said we should model a new constitution after. Notice it didn't work, by the way. Notice it's just a bunch of promises that don't work, but those are positive rights. We don't actually have positive rights technically or typically in the United States. Landon Mack and James says, if I get jailed for lolly porn, can I hire you, Nick? Yeah, buddy. Hopefully you get charged at the federal level and I can get federally waived in or something. But don't look at lolly porn, man. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. Oh my God. Okay. Let's read through this article. With about a month until the 2019 Maryland General Assembly reconvenes January 9th, the new Democratic State House Majority Leader is looking to continue the progress made last session on gun violence prevention by banning 3D and ghost guns in the state. If you notice, the number of crimes committed by 3D printed and ghost guns is somewhere near zero, if not zero. If not zero. Because I promise you, the day that someone 3D prints a gun and murders children, it will be on every news station 24 hours a day. The day that someone 3D prints the Cody Wilson handgun and forces an underage minor to have sex with them at 3D printed gunpoint, you won't get rid of that story for days on CNN. Anderson Cooper will be fisting himself to get that story. Like, he'll have it in his hand, put it so far up his own anus that it'll come out his mouth with his hand, and he'll have the story printed for the camera. That's how happy they will be when someone dies to a 3D printed gun. I'm pretty sure zero murders ever have happened to a 3D printed gun. I'm pretty sure it's never happened. But they're wanting to prevent the senseless gun violence of 3D printed guns. Molly McAllister, wow, another huge one. Holy cats. Thank you. Thank you. 1966. A well-regulated militia necessary for the security of a free state of California was formed, called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Then Ronald Reagan saw black people with guns and some poo came out and modern gun control as we know it was born. Yes, absolutely. One of the many sins of Ronald Reagan, for all of his virtues, one of the many sins of Ronald Reagan was gun control in California. And yes, it largely targeted blacks in the 60s. It really did. The Black Panther Party, of course, being relatively terrible people in a lot of ways. But kind of a predictable outcome from the civil rights abuses that had been going on against blacks for so long. You would have a militant extremist segment of the counter narrative, so to speak, come about. And yes, gun control largely disenfranchised blacks. Martin Luther King, Dr. King, was denied gun ownership despite clearly needing it, right? He was denied gun licensure because of who he was and his political opinion. It's absolutely true. And yes, we see the same thing with drug regulations. You know, weed restrictions largely stemmed out of fear of Mexicans using weed and a desire to make Mexicans stop using weed. And then, of course, into the 80s, that translated into the black community as well. You can look at the racial origins of various laws, but don't you dare look at the racial origins of gun control, because if you look at the racial origins of gun control, that runs counter to the liberal narrative, and it is absolutely not going to be recognized by people writing these types of articles. Thank you again, Molly McAllister. I really appreciate it. The Cockmaster. The whole gun violence issue is just a smokescreen. Absolutely. Absolutely. When you think of the amount of, think about this. Think of the amount of public and private schools in the United States. It's somewhere around 80 to 90,000 public and private schools. And the fact that a mass shooting doesn't happen every day is literally a miracle. Literally a miracle. With the way that guns murder people all the time, it's an absolute miracle. Kyle Ferry says, I only print 40 guns. Checkmate, Democrats. Yeah, buddy. Future guns and past guns. What up? And then Darking D says, but rackets, they're made of plastic, and plastic is scary. It is very scary. It is very scary. Guys, make sure you recycle your 3D printed guns. We should tell California that they can be made from recycled materials. Then they'll like them. I just thought of a great guest to have along those lines. Maj Touré of Black Guns Matter. I've never heard of him. Get me in touch. I'll talk to him. Absolutely. Okay. House Majority, let's get back to this article. House Majority Leader Delegate Kathleen Dumais, Democrat from Montgomery, shocker, said she will be introducing a bill banning the possession of 3D printed guns, plastic guns capable of shooting live ammunition and made in a 3D printer, and ghost guns, nearly complete and without serial numbers. Ghost guns are not nearly complete and without serial numbers. Ghost guns, I guess, is a buzzword that doesn't have any legal meaning. But what they typically mean is an untraceable firearm. And by untraceable, they mean untraceable through the Federal Firearms Registry. Because all guns manufactured for commercial purposes after, I think, 1964 have to have a registration number attached to them. So when they find a gun that has been used in the commission of a crime, they can trace the ownership of that gun through all of the legal channels that it has happened. So if a gun was used by Jamal to murder Tyrone, is that racist? If a gun was used by Nelson Smith to murder Thaddeus McAdich, I don't know, pick a race, it doesn't matter. If a gun was used by A to murder B, they want to see if A owned the gun legally. If A owned the gun legally, they want to find out how they got it and all that stuff. Maybe it wasn't owned by A. Maybe it was owned by party C. Then they want to try and find out if party C transferred it to A illegally, if another crime was committed, if there's or gun trafficking going on, if all sorts of things. Ghost guns typically mean an untraceable gun through the federal firearms trace system. They can trace a gun back to its manufacturer through this system. Now, you can privately sell guns without registering the sale person to person. Check with a lawyer in your state on how to do this. But typically, that's something you can do, and you don't have to register the ownership. However, they will know eventually who owned the gun, and then they can go and interview them. They can say, hey, what happened to this gun of yours? Oh, it was stolen. Oh, I sold it to so-and-so. Oh, he murdered someone? That sucks. You know, they can do that. There's no liability for the ownership and transfer of a gun as long as it was done legally. But that's what they mean by untraceable. They don't mean like it's an all zinc gun that can get through a metal detector. That's a different type of untraceable, and that's also illegal. Guns have to have a certain amount of metal on them, even a 3D printed gun, to be legal. And it's an amount of metal that is detectable by your standard metal detector that would be at any security checkpoint that you go through. Okay? Owning a gun with less metal than that is illegal. 3D printing that gun is illegal. You have to affix a metal plate to the, what's it called? I can't remember. Whatever the first gun Cody Wilson made was almost entirely plastic, except for a nail for the firing pin, and then it had a metal plate that you had to attach to make it a legal gun. There are already regulations on this stuff. Ben says, buy more guns. If the government asks so, I have none. Yes, attaboy. Bagel Goose says, my gun is made out of 100% recycled compost. Yes, yes. Don't murder any hippies with it either. Molly McAllister says, Glock 17, German plastic wonder gun undetectable by metal detectors. Right, and would be absolutely illegal in the United States if it did not have the requisite amount of metal in it. Let's get back to this Let's get back to this article. Nearly complete without serial. Federal law already prohibits the creation of untraceable guns, as I just said, and it's in the article. Dumais said her bill would provide legislative support to the legal actions already taken by Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh. She's talking about his legal actions against Defense Distributed because he is a giant pile of cucks. And he should go and catch fire. Literally catch fire in Minecraft. Not be lit on fire, not have violence against him, just spontaneously combust. Because these people are trampling our individual rights, and I hate it. And they're lawyers, which makes it worse. In July, Frosh joined a lawsuit filed by Washington State's Attorney General. That's Gruber, Gruel, or whatever his name is. I think he's a Sikh. He's got a turban or something on. And that guy sucks too. By the way, you can eat an exhaust pipe for all I care. Literally eat it with a fork and a knife, hopefully prepared tastefully by a chef. I'm not threatening you. I wouldn't threaten an attorney general, except with impeachment. Get impeached. You suck. Filed by Washington State's Attorney General to block the release of instructions for 3D guns to the public by Defense Distributed, Inc., an organization that sought to distribute the digital schematics. A final ruling on the case is expected to be made this month. This month? I guess I got to check up on Defense Distributed Double D's case. The Cockmaster says, in California, we need to apply to the DOJ for a serial number prior to manufacturing one. We also need to embed 3.7 ounces of steel into poly receivers. Such a pain. Yeah, everybody has to embed 3.7 ounces of steel into poly receivers. That's a federal law. Darking D says, hashtag kill all lawyers in Minecraft. Guys, I strongly recommend the racist selection of Hennessy White. It's a fantastic cognac. Quote, obviously the state can't regulate the internet, obviously, but we can certainly indicate what is allowable in Maryland or what you can possess in Maryland. How about you possess a one-way ticket to Greenland? Dumais said of the plastic guns, they might be legal otherwise, but you're not going to be able to create them or have them in Maryland. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Because if that case goes to the Supreme Court, you're going to win. The individual is going to win, not the state. You have no right to ban that. Specifics on how the ban will be implemented are not yet clear, but a draft of the bill would be available in the coming weeks, she said. A ban on knowledge. This is absolutely First Amendment protected speech. He uses a rag to keep his brains in. Oh, wrecked. Mark Pinnock, the president of the Maryland Shall Issue, a Second Amendment advocacy group, called the potential legislation absurd and would represent a ban on the possession of knowledge. Absolutely. No one has ever used it in a crime. Listen to this guy. No one has ever. He's even more definitive on it than me because I don't know. I mean, maybe there's one out there. I didn't think so. This guy says no. What am I? What am I, the article police? Pinnock said, it would cost far more to 3D print a gun than to acquire a gun from on the street. It's just hysteria and nothing more. Yes, it's hysteria. It's these people lobbying to dummies for increased political power. They're lobbying to dummies. What is happening here? Sorry. Lady Rackets is sending me stuff. And I just need to make sure that everything was okay. Holy cats. Where Tiger Ray says, a gun seller can't be forced to sell you a gun, especially if you look sketchy. How does that work with the Second Amendment? They're just a free company, right? A private company doing private business. No, they can't. Again, it's not a positive right. It's not a positive right on gun ownership. And the Second Amendment is not written that way. It's written, it shall not be infringed. Your right to keep and bear arms shall not be stopped by an act of the state. It's not that they owe you a firearm or that they must protect your ability to acquire one. It simply says that they cannot take away your ownership of one without due process and all that stuff. Also, did you watch the 60-minute segment on plastic and how it's not actually being recycled? I watched one years and years ago, I think 2001. I was in a sociology class and the professor talked to us about recycling plastic, and something about like 80% of it was not recycled. It was actually just burned. So, yeah, of course. It doesn't, the polymer doesn't reintegrate in the same way. So most of it does not. You know, guys, I'm so pro Second Amendment, though. I'm for it being a positive right. I think the government should mail me all sorts of guns and rocket-propelled grenades and everything cool I can think of. Most 3D printers, devices that create three-dimensional objects from computer-generated model, cost hundreds of dollars, while the more complex models can reach several thousand. This makes acquiring a 3D gun cost prohibitive, Pinnock said, and the guns are designed to shoot one low-caliber round at a time, making it an ineffective way to carry out a crime. Tell that to the mob, 22 to the back of the head, nice and quiet. Nice and quiet. Hey, we got him. Don't worry about it. No big deal. One low-caliber round is all you need, fam. All right. But newly appointed vice chair of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, Senator Will Smith, Fresh Prince, Democrat from Montgomery, said that 3D gun technology is rapidly evolving, which should spur the General Assembly to address the issue. No, it shouldn't. No, it shouldn't. Why should it be? Even if you could make a 3D printed bazooka, it shouldn't spur the General Assembly to address the issue. You have no authority to do so. Okay. I'm not going to... I don't want to read the rest of this. This is dumb. I just read an article about this. Gun safety advocates plan new blue state push, but it's not a conspiracy, y'all. Molly McAllister says, I hate to use this, but some of those saying 10 to 11 million immigrants are too many to track down and deport say tracking and disposing of 250 to 500 million firearms is perfectly reasonable. Absolutely. Absolutely. And who are we putting in danger? You're going to send what? You're going to send a local cop? Because it's not a congressman. Let's let Congress go door to door and collect those guns. By the way, if a congressman came to my door to collect my gun, there would be a .45 caliber handgun pointed at his mug saying, "Get off my land. I paid for it. I paid my taxes. I don't want you here. You can go straight to hell." So, if you're a Minnesota congressman and you want to take my guns that I tragically lost at a lake, I will find one and I will answer the door with it at your face. And it will be legal because you have no right to be on my property, you pile of communist scum. And I'm talking to those Minnesota legislatures. By the way, Republicans and Democrats, you can go straight to hell for all I care. They can't pry my gun from my cold, dead hands because they'll be dead first. Whew. Maybe I didn't need that glass of cognac. Okay. Let me see. Where was this thing? Here we go. Is this it? Here we go. This is not the article I was reading earlier today. Let me see if I can get it more in. Come on. Get it more in focus here for you. Not the article I was reading earlier today, but this will do. This will do. New bill bans building AR-15s and buying, selling parts for firearms. Guys, this is getting real. This is getting real. And this is, like, I hate to be the hyperbolic guy. I hate to sound like Glenn Beck, like, you know, you gotta buy gold to manufacture your guns. Listen, folks, I've been saying this a long time. No, I hate to be the doomsayer. This is getting real. The fact that they're trying to ban the parts for firearms is a real problem that we're facing. Where Tiger Ray says, actually, all the plastic was sent to China for recycling because they have more capability than we do, but tariffs stopped that, and now we are sending it to other countries where we don't know what they're doing with it. It's still getting in the oceans. Well, there you go. I'm of the Simpsons approach, right? Where you put all the six-pack plastic rings all together and just throw that out in the ocean and bring in all the fish. Make a fish stick company. That's my approach to recycling plastic. Okay. Let's name them, or whatever it is. Whatever meme you want. Whatever. Let's be as anti-Semitic as possible. I don't even know if this guy's Jewish, but it's anti-Semitism to use memes. So I guess that makes it anti-Semitic. And YouTube, I'm being satirical here. I don't even know if Frank Pallone is Jewish. We're gonna name the senator, the congressman. The congressman. He's not a senator. This cockhole is a congressman. Representative Frank Pallone Jr., Democrat. It's this weird, shocking trend that all these taint lickers are Democrats. Has submitted a bill that, if passed into law, would be one of the most expansive restrictions on firearms and firearm accessories ever enacted in the United States. Let me read that as Hank Hill. Would be one of the most expansive restrictions on firearms and firearm accessories ever enacted in the United States. Pallone's legislation, H.R. 7115, mandates the prohibition on all of the following. Prohibit the sale, acquisition, distribution, and commerce or import into the United States of certain firearm receiver castings or blanks, assault weapons parts kits, and machine gun parts kits, and the marketing or advertising of such castings or blanks and kits on any medium or of electronic communications to require homemade firearms to have serial numbers and for other purposes. So not only is he trying to ban the import of the actual metal 80% lowers. That's what he's after, 80% lower receivers. Not only is he trying to do that, he's trying to ban the commercial speech associated with those things. Not only can you not create them, you can't advertise them. Absolutely ridiculous. The Rookie says Beck is awful. He ruined a good thing because he was failing, had enough power to engulf his adversaries. Yes, he did. He did. I used to listen to Glenn Beck. I got actually really tired of his constant doomsaying. I liked Pat and Stu a lot because they were actually funny. But I got tired of listening to him and seeing him be weird, like outright weird during the election and so on. And again, I'm not a Trump guy, but Beck took a very strange position and is, I think he's trying to live up to an idea of saying he would never compromise his principles. But I think in doing that, in never compromising his principles, he's actually compromising his principles in the opposite direction to try and be sure he doesn't slide into it. And that's a danger of anyone who takes a really hardline position on anything, that they'll actually go too far the opposite direction. Yes, this is of course a First Amendment issue. Commercial speech is protected speech. Only way mass confiscation would even put a dent is to go full jackboot and a lot of people going to die then. This is from Molly McAllister. Yeah, I agree. Not even from my cold dead hands types, just extrajudicial executions because no-knock warrants are BS. Yes. Yeah. It puts cops in a situation of trying to take a dangerous weapon from someone who shouldn't have it taken from them. Sean Thompson asks if I've talked about the new ATF memo on the bump stock ban and how to dispose of them. Despise of them? I think you mean dispose of them. No, I have not. But again, that's real problem, and that's coming from ATF. That's from the administration. Guys, you who support Trump, need to make it known that you're not okay with how his administration is handling bump stocks. Bump stocks are not the problem. There's been, one mass shooting with bump stocks ever? And then they got regulated? And they got regulated like a year later? Oh, and by the way, that's the one mass shooting we don't really have any info on, right? Where'd all the info? How are they? They're able to find out everything about every mass shooter except the Las Vegas guy. They just can't seem to put together a story on that guy. Why is that? What happened there? I actually don't know. No one knows because they won't talk about it. Brad Burns for $17.76 says, $17.76. Thanks, buddy. He says $17.76 will commence again. That's an Alex Jones quote, right? Sean Thompson, go to your Facebook page to see the memo. Yeah, I will. I've seen the memo. Maybe I'll do it in just a minute. All Out of Bubblegum says, I can easily see the drug cartels moving from importing drugs to the importing of firearm parts. Oh, if you think drug cartels aren't already importing firearm parts? Yeah, buddy, they're doing it. Yeah, from Hellheart, I apologize for that, Hank Hill. Let me say that. Typically, I'm much better, but my voice is very hoarse. I think from all the coughing. I'll make up for it at some point in the future. Have I looked into HR 7115? Not beyond this article and the other one I read. I haven't actually read the bill beyond that. Okay, beyond the obvious congressional overreach. Now, this is, of course, from New American, which is pro Second Amendment. So they're going to be slanted right on this. Beyond the obvious congressional overreach and oath breaking that is central to every provision in the gun grab, the title itself is purposefully misleading, amounting to nothing more than clickbait. Titled the 3D Firearms Prohibition Act. 3D printed firearms or firearm accessories are only the tip of this totalitarian iceberg. Consider, for example, that if you build guns for a hobby and this bill passes, you better look for another hobby. Yeah, absolutely. I know what many of you are saying. There's no way a bill like this passes. Yes, you'd think that, wouldn't you? Hopefully it dies in the Senate, but it's likely to pass the House because the Democrats are all high on their own farts from winning the House. So they're definitely going to pass symbolic legislation. Reading the bill closely, it's obvious that the bill has nearly nothing to do with 3D printing of guns, but anyone aware of the fact that congressmen rarely read the bills they vote on also realizes this broad ban could actually make it through the House and the Senate relying on nothing more than its name. Does anyone reading this article doubt there are scores of lawmakers in D.C. who would vote for a ban on 3D printing of guns, even if the bill has very little to do with that subject? How many bills claiming to be one thing are actually nothing more than tyrannical Trojan horses hiding betrayal of the Constitution? Here's AmmoLand's summary of how huge an impact on the right to keep and bear arms Representative Pallone's bill would make. The bill will ban the selling of all forms and all forms of advertising of parts kits for modern sporting rifles. Upper and lower parts kit allow a user to build their own guns using a stripped lower or upper receiver. In a vast majority of these situations, the user buys a serialized lower receiver from a gun dealer. These serialized lower receivers are considered firearms and fall under all state and federal firearms laws. They require a background check like any other firearm. By preventing the sale of parts kits, the bill would make it almost impossible to repair a rifle. When something breaks, the gun would be useless. The bill doesn't seem to exempt licensed gunsmiths from the law. It would make all semi-automatic rifles impossible to repair even by a licensed gunsmith. The writers of the bill also did not specify their definition of a parts kit. Of course not. They don't actually know. A drop-in trigger could run afoul of this new law if the federal government decides to define such a device as a parts kit. It leaves the door wide open for more gun bans by refining parts kits. Absolutely. I'm not going to read this whole article. Guys, they're coming after not only 3D printed guns, but CNC milled guns. They're coming after your ability to know about how to make a gun, your ability to make a gun, something that has long been legal and protected information in the United States. Joshua Gilbert says, by that logic, there has only been one murder with a legally owned machine gun, but they were the first to receive heavy regulation. Yep, only one. It's actually true. Despite them being the most effective murder machines you could possibly make, people don't use them. Hold on. What is this? Oh, goodness gracious. Brad Burns said, Iron Martyr. I believe it's more likely that a tax akin to the property tax will be placed on firearm ownership that will be increased until guns become quasi-illegal. Yep, that or they'll go after ammo. Absolutely. Brad Burns says, yes, Rekieta law. That's meme daddy Alex Jones. And Puck in the Knee says, Rekieta law. The really bad part about it is that it apparently defines almost all semi-automatic firearms as assault weapons. I mean, that's bad. Assault weapons doesn't have a legal definition, so putting one on it will only be stupid. Andy Richter says, I'd argue that a machine gun sucks for murder, only good for suppression. The problem is you're arguing with people who've never fired a weapon in their life. Never. Never fired any sort of gun in their entire life. They don't know anything about it. So yeah, they don't know that spray and pray isn't the most effective form of killing. And that, most military would not use fully automatic firing for like actual combat, but for suppressive fire. That's actually what it's good for typically. I mean, if you're up close, obviously, if you're like pointing at a crowd that's 20 feet away and you're just mowing down, fully automatic could do a lot of damage. But typically you're not. But this never has been about what's actually dangerous, right? When they banned fully automatic weapons in the first place, it was after what? The Valentine's Day Massacre. What caused the Valentine's Day Massacre ultimately was prohibition. They created the gangster violence and the Tommy gun usage of the 20s and 30s. Prohibition did that. That's where it started. They took away something. When you take away things, you create problems in society. It's almost like the government shouldn't be deciding what is and isn't okay, and that the market should. But there's that. All right, guys. I think it's about that time. I think we should close out the stream. I am happy to be back. I'm ready to get to all kinds of work. We've got big things coming. Since many of you were not here at the beginning, don't leave just yet. Many of you were not here at the beginning of the stream. I want to make sure you understand what's going on the rest of the week. Tomorrow, I've got the kid who recorded his history high school teacher. It's going around on Twitter. High school teacher saying if you retweet PewDiePie, you're supporting anti-Semitism and you may be criminally liable if PewDiePie is criminally liable for his evil anti-Jew speech. Okay? I've got the kid. Hopefully, we're going to name the professor. Hopefully, I'll be inviting that professor onto the show. That is tomorrow. Wednesday, I'm waiting for a response from Sriracha. If Sriracha is available, we will do another Greer stream. Russell Greer will be reading through his book. He has threatened another lawsuit. Suspect it may be against all of Kiwi Farms. We'll find out soon, hopefully. But we will be reading through Russell Greer's book, hopefully Wednesday. I will announce it as soon as I get confirmation from Sriracha. Thursday will be Mindy Wheeler's ex-business partner in owning a comic shop. If you remember, I did an interview with Mindy Wheeler a while back. I enjoyed the interview. I got along with Mindy just fine. In that interview, she made claims that her and her husband's business partner was skimming comics off of the shop, implying he was stealing or embezzling the comics. He has taken issue with that categorization, that description of his actions. He wants to tell his side of the story, and he would like to talk about why Mindy Wheeler and her husband are quote unquote hated in the comic book industry. I have no knowledge of what that may be, and I can't do anything other than say that I'm 99% sure that this is their business partner. He's provided me some proof that I cannot obviously disclose for personal reasons, personal doxing reasons for him. But he has said that he has shown me that, convinced me that this is the person they were in business with. So he will be on to say his piece about it. We'll hopefully talk about Comicsgate and the comics industry from another perspective as well, following his discussions on the story. If you like or dislike Mindy Wheeler, that might be very interesting to tune into and get another perspective on it. Let me be clear, I have no problem with Mindy, and this is not done like out of any sort of spite to her or anything like that. This is me giving someone who was spoken about on my stream the opportunity to say their piece. So what they say are their words, and I will engage them and give them, the same platform I gave Mindy. Absolutely. Friday, hopefully confirming with Cecil and Yellow Flash that we will be doing a drinking stream. It will be very fun and laid back. We're just going to have a good time making fun of people, talking about comics, talking about speech, expression, creation, talking about YouTube, talking about censorship. Fun stream, lots of liquor, lots of laughs. That will be Friday. So that is this week, hopefully. I'm hoping that will be Friday. I should not say it will be because I have not confirmed with both of them the schedule yet, but as soon as I have that confirmed, I'll announce it. But anyway, what is confirmed is tomorrow, Kid from High School, Thursday, Mindy Wheeler's ex-business partner. Hopefully, Wednesday we'll have Greer. Friday we'll have Cecil and Yellow Flash. Come join all of those streams if you have the chance. I appreciate every view. I appreciate every chat and comment. I appreciate the interactions. I appreciate the super chats and justice chats, of course. But I also appreciate just your general discussions that you guys are having in the chat. Even if I'm not able to read and address it on stream, I appreciate the interaction. You guys make this channel work. You make this channel fun. Please tell your friends. I am gunning for 15,000. I'm gunning, watch out, New Jersey and Maryland, for 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you guys can help me in any way make that happen, I appreciate it. Hopefully going to do some cheesy, if I can, some cheesy Rekieta law awareness videos over the next day or two. And we'll see what happens with those. Thank you guys. One more chat from Landon Mac and James says, I know I give you like $50 in super chats a month, but I'm so happy to see how much you're making today. You deserve it. Can't wait to drink on Weeb stream with you. Miss you, buddy. Much love. Yes, that is in the works, by the way, a Weeb stream, which will be me, Anime Outsiders, Landon Mac and James, and then my good friend who runs another anime review podcast that you guys should listen to if you like anime or want to learn about anime or want an opinion on anime for whatever reason. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Love you all. Talk to you soon. Tomorrow, join me tomorrow. Make sure you are subscribed. I know several people got unsubscribed, and please share this with other people. If you want this channel to keep growing, and the bigger the fan base, the bigger the guests. You know, as I get more and more people on my channel, I'll be able to attract more and more people to come on and do interviews with me. And I want to bring you controversial interviews from the left and the right. I want to bring you heated debates on Stream Me with all sorts of uncouth words flying around. We're going to do all of that. So keep in touch. Also, I'm working on a debate between Edwin Boyette and John Della Rose. We will announce that as we have details, if it does come to pass. There's some talk about it on Twitter, but we're working behind the scenes to see if we can make that happen. All right, guys. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. This week, there's a stream every night. Monday through Friday at least. Maybe Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Maybe Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Keep joining me. We're hitting the ground running. And a lot to do before the end of the year. Thanks, guys. Hope you have a good night. Peace.